Chief, what was I saying?
Danny, Chief Smith.
Oh, I guess we're getting ready to start.
Can you just do a quick survey and see how we're looking as far as?
I got 56.
But there's still some out there.
And then plus what's
I
coming
didn't realize that
in
I was
here,
sitting
it's
next to
758 plus whatever's
I
there.
realize that we're gonna have to listen to all these.
We're not shutting it down.
Oh no, I'm good.
Maybe we can.
In and out when we're done. Hang out in the hall.
Well, it's very.
I'm
So
I just want to be vote on it.
No,
yeah,
but it is on.
Not throw it on us to vote on it.
yeah. I really wish that Clive or Dick Bone were here to say, well, why did the
Clive is here.
Now I have
No,
as
I'm
much
sorry.
as the Fox.
Frank Robbins or Dick Bone, the people in the Charter Review Committee.
Did you count us?
I'd like them to have.
No, did you count us? We count.
I did.
Oh.
I did. You need to shoot somebody.
Do we know if this door opens?
No, because then I gotta deal with all this.
Go outside?
Me first.
It's the back, right? Yeah, because that's the sign.
Swing me.
No,
Okay, come to
but I
work.
always want to find the closest.
Oh, what did he say? Did he
You
say
never know
something
what
to us?
happened.
I don't
I've been
think I
in
got
meetings
anything in an
with
email.
about 500 angry people
We're ready.
before where the
Let's do
sheriff
it to
had
it.
Did you
to
get our people?
escort people out, and
I got you. You got everything?
I've seen some pretty ugly. Yeah, where people were threatened, physically threatened. It happens.
Street.
Stupid. I get that mixed up too.
Star, Sandra,
Okay.
Roy.
I get what he's saying. I think.
That's it.
All right. Most of these people who work next to him can say, we don't want you graduating.
Notice is hereby given that the Lago Vista City Council is holding a regular meeting on Thursday, July 19th, 2018, beginning at 6:33 p.m. in the City Council chambers at City Hall, 5803 Thunderbird, Lago Vista, Texas, as prescribed by VTCA Government Code Section 551.041 to consider the following agenda items. Items do not have to be taken in the same order as shown in the meeting notice. Sandra, please note that we have all of our council members here tonight. We also have Dave Street, Chief Smith, Eric Belay, I saw Eric, there's Eric, Chris Godwin, Star Lockwood, yourself, Roy Jambor, and Aaron Salvetta, our city attorney. Is there anybody I missed? Staff, all right. If you would, please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. You may be seated.
Thank you.
Forest out there.
Get that out of the way. All right, we now go to citizen comments. In accordance with the Open Meetings Act, council is prohibited from acting or discussing other than factual responses to specific questions, any items not on the agenda. So this is our citizens comments section. Those of y'all that have signed up to speak on certain agenda items, you'll be called upon when we get to that agenda item. This is for people who would like to bring something up to our attention that is not on the agenda. Please note, for those of you who haven't been here before, this is a live recorded council meeting on YouTube. So when you come up, please speak directly into the microphone so that the people watching at home can hear you. You have 3 minutes. Is there anybody who would like to speak at this time? Yes, sir. When you come to the mic, please state your name and address for the record, please.
My name is Richard Sterry, Post Office Box 4404 in Lago Vista. That's Coyote Trail, for those of you that don't know where it is. What? Oh. Is that better? Okay. In the budget meeting that was held in this room by the city council and some staff members earlier, the subject came up that sooner or later we're going to need to have an economic development director, and I'm on the committee for that, and I just want to urge people to give that some serious consideration because I think it's something we badly need. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. All right. Next, items of community interest. Pursuant to Texas Government Code Section 551.0415, the City Council may report on any of the following items: expression of thanks, gratitude, and condolences, information regarding holiday schedules, recognition of individuals, i.e. proclamations, reminders regarding City Council events, reminders regarding community events, health and safety announcements. And I'm going to start. I don't have the information with me, but I believe we have some people to recognize for an LCRA grant. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Could you expound on that some? I don't have that information with me.
Yes, sir. So, do it now?
Yes.
Good. The city did apply for and discuss a grant with LCRA for water improvements. Dave Stewart and Eric Belay and Councilor Ron Smith had all had dialogue with LCRA. We came in this past week to receive the massive paper check. I believe that was $49,000. There has been a picture posted online. Unfortunately, the paper check had no value, but they did give us a check that did have value. So that'll all go directly towards upgrading our water system, and LCR being a partner to assist us with that is fantastic.
Thank you, sir. I just want to make sure those people were recognized. Does anybody else have anything they would? Okay, as far as I know, we have no holiday schedules, no events. Health and safety is hot out there. Drink lots of water. All right. Nobody has anything else. We'll move into our action items. Number 1, an ordinance of the City of Lago Vista, Texas, ordering a special election on 6th November 2018 to consider 8 proposed amendments to the charter of the City of Lago Vista, clarifying the city's annexation and disannexation authority, amending the city's eminent domain authority to be in accordance with state law, removing the executive power of the mayor and limiting the mayor's authority, clarifying the powers of the city council to act, clarifying the role of the city manager, clarifying the authority of the city manager to transfer funds, adding new rules for candidates elected to office, clarifying the authority of the Board of Adjustment, correcting typographical errors, making provision for the conduct of the elections and language to be used on ballots, authorizing the city manager to contract for election services and other provisions incident and relating to the elections, and providing for severability and an effective date. Okay. Let me pull that up real quick.
Mayor, while you're pulling that up, let me just give a brief overview of that item, if you're okay with that.
Yes.
This discussion, this ordinance is the ordinance that will be considered by the council to place items on the ballot for consideration for changes to the charter. This would be our fourth hearing, I believe, by the City Council of any charter amendment topics that were originally presented to the council by the Charter Review Committee. The document that was presented to council is going to be a working document tonight. So anything that we want to change, we're going to change on the fly tonight in hopes that council will be able to make a vote at this meeting to be able to place items on that ballot.
On our timeline, this is when we need to make the decision, right? Is tonight, according to our timeline?
Yes, Mayor.
Do we have it paraphrased somewhere? We don't have, we just have the whole document.
No, if you go to electronic page 49, that's where each proposition starts, and you'll see the summary. I think it came from Aaron, your all's office.
Yes, ma'am.
It's the ordinance with
That's what like we had at the last meeting. All right. No, I don't have that. 49? Oh, Proposition A, there it is,
Yeah.
Proposition A, I found it.
Okay.
All right, so Proposition A, annexation and disannexation be amended to provide for the city's annexation authority in accordance with current Texas law and to specify disannexation by ordinance. If approved, Section 1.04 would read as follows. Section 104, annexation and disannexation, annexation by city council. The council shall have the power by ordinance to annex adjacent property, to fix the boundaries of the city, and to provide for the alteration or extension of said boundaries pursuant to the laws of the state of Texas, now or as may be amended. Disannexation, the city council may, by ordinance, disannex any territory within the corporate boundaries of the city if the city council determines that the territory is not necessary or sustainable for city purposes. For clarification, what this does, back in the last legislative session, the state legislature took away the powers of involuntary annexation to cities residing within counties over 500,000 people. We're in Travis County. There's a little over 500,000 people, I think 501,000. So we can no longer involuntarily annex any property. If anybody wants to be annexed, they have to come to us and ask to be annexed. Therefore, we have to adjust our charter so that it is in line with what current state law is. All right, anybody on council have questions on Proposition A?
Mr. Mayor, I think just for clarification, in our last in-depth discussion about this, it was that we were just trying to make it flexible so that as the state law changed, we would not have to adjust the charter moving forward. Is that correct?
Right, that's when, yes, that's the now or as may be amended. All right, if everybody on the council is good, I do not have anybody signed up for this agenda item. This is not a public hearing, but if there is anybody that would like to speak on this, I'll open the floor to you. Do I have anybody? No, okay. So Proposition A, it is open for a motion.
Are we going to motion on each one individually and take a vote individually, or do we?
We have, I would say we have to because,
Okay.
because there may be some we pull out and some that,
Sure.
I'll make a motion that we place Proposition A on the ballot for the special call election in November.
I'll second. Go ahead. I'll second that.
all right, I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Hearing none, Proposition A will be on the ballot. Okay,
Procedurally, Mayor, we'll take the individual votes. At the end, you'll approve the ordinance as you voted individually for all the propositions. You'll approve the ordinance as the official document by which we'll go. But as the mayor said, formally, we need to make sure there's a vote on each individual item. So.
Yeah, and I'll do it formally just so the audience can see how we are actually voting. All right, Proposition B. We're going to skip this one. I'm kidding. Proposition B, Sal, Section 2.03, entitled Eminent Domain, be amended to enable the city to exercise its power of eminent domain pursuant to state law on property owned by a property owners association, that it is dedicated and used as a parkland so that the city may use that land as a city park. If approved, the second paragraph of Section 2.03 would be deleted. I'm sure most of y'all have seen the letters that have been put out by the POA board, and is there anybody that hasn't seen that? Okay, I didn't think so. I wanted y'all to know that up here at City Council, we deal with more than just LVPOA. There are other POAs in the city, and as we grow over the next quarter century, and if we continue at 10% growth, we'll be at about 35 or 40,000 people. I would say that the LVPOA will not be the largest POA in the city limits of Lago Vista at that point in time. Don't know how many of us in this room will still be around at that time, but that is something we have got to think about at the city level. Yes, it has operated great. We've had a great relationship for the past 34 years with the LVPOA, but the way it was presented, and this is the way I understood it, is that we have got, if we're going to start growing, we have got to start thinking about the rest of Lago Vista and other POAs and things that may come in to fruition as we grow. So we felt like, or I think the Charter Review Committee felt like this clause needed to be deleted so that somewhere down the line, if a POA were to fail, there would be something that could actually be in place to possibly, hopefully, protect those parks. No guarantees. There's never a guarantee on anything, but at least the opportunity would be there that the city might be in a position to use their eminent domain powers to acquire the city property and continue operating it as a park, as opposed to allowing the land to be sold to the highest bidder, go to private developers, and then they're coming to the city for zoning changes to build that waterfront hotel or whatever they would want to do with that property. So I'm going to open this up for the council first, then I will allow citizens to speak. I think we all know what your opinion is. We've heard it on social media and emails and stuff. So I am going to ask that you don't just get up and say, no, I'm opposed. We have about 79 people in here. I would prefer not to hear 79, no, I'm opposed. So in that scope that I kind of brought up of how do we, moving forward over the next few decades, how as a city do we look to protect properties that aren't city property, that are privately owned, parks and stuff like that? How do we protect that? I know we're not going to get any specific answers tonight, but I would like to see if anybody has, some suggestions that would be as good or better than what we have proposed right now. So if I call you up to speak, please address the council with some ideas as opposed to just saying no. Is everybody okay with that? Thank you.
I have a question. So unless we say.
I have not recognized you, ma'am.
I'm sorry.
Hold on just a second. At this point, I'm gonna open it up to council to see if y'all have any discussion.
So the only use case that we've talked about is if a POA were to fail. And so my suggestion is instead of removing that particular line, potentially we augment it to say something to the effect that we won't use those powers unless a POA fails. And in that case, we have the ability to move in and use eminent domain. I think it accomplishes a couple things. Number one, it takes care of the use case that we're afraid of. But number two, it takes care of the overreach fears that some of the folks in the audience have. So I would at least ask us to consider that as a possibility for how we move forward versus just stripping it out.
I like that idea.
I like
So-
that idea
so
quite a
that-
bit, Councilman.
That would imply then that we would have to make changes to the verbiage?
Right, and so it says right now, the city shall not, however, use the power of eminent domain to acquire land that is owned by a property owners association and that is dedicated and used as parkland for use as a city park. And I would say, comma, unless the property owners association were to fail. And you might be able to give us better legal language to use, but just add a comma and an additional statement that indicates that's the use case we're trying to accomplish.
And Councilman Sullivan, I thought of that as well. I just didn't know if we had time at this stage.
Do we have time?
You sure do. You can make any changes that you want. Tonight's your night to do it. You can make it from the dais. As Josh said, this is a working document.
Okay.
Council.
I didn't know if that would have to go through legal review and take a couple of days and we'd run past our deadline.
It's a simple, as Councilmember Sullivan has expressed, it's a pretty simple change. It has a dramatic effect as far as the change in your authority. It does open the door to allow you to provide those protections and the opportunity to exercise eminent domain under that one circumstance.
I mean, quite frankly, I don't think the city needs those parks, doesn't want those parks. We don't want the expense that goes with those parks. Leave it with the POA. The only thing I'm suggesting is have an insurance policy. For whatever reason, a POA fails and we want to ensure that those lands remain as parks, that we have the ability to do that and not have to compete with external third parties that could potentially throw all kinds of money at the problem.
Mr. Mayor, that makes me.
The language change that you've proposed, Councilmember, it wouldn't prevent someone from trying to purchase the property should the POA fail. However, the city would have the authority to exercise eminent domain. They would essentially need to be prepared to do that quickly if that circumstance occurred.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't appear that that's an imminent issue.
Sure.
But the change that you're recommending to the language for the proposition is a pretty simple one that we can take care of tonight.
Okay.
Well, and folks, I've also haven't got with the POA yet. Didn't realize last month that this was going to kick up so much stuff. And so, you know, we hadn't quite got with the POA yet.
I did go.
So what I was thinking is not only in addition to us protecting, but now that we realize that there is a much bigger concern than we thought, or that I thought. I mean, I knew it would cause some trouble, but just not outrage. Seeing if there was something that the POAs, as they come online, or the existing POAs, if they don't already have something in place, if they would consider doing something that would maybe just give the city the right of first refusal or something like that, in case they got to this point and they were going to have to liquidate assets or something, if there was something. But that's
One down the road.
that's something else down the road, yes.
Mayor, I have an alternative. The alternative is to not do Proposition B and instead, if the POA was willing, to set up a subcommittee on both sides with liaisons on both sides and go review this thing and possibly bring it back next year.
Mayor,
It's
if I
what-
may. So you do have a limitation if you do put propositions on the ballot. and any of them pass, then you would be prohibited from making a change to your charter for 2 years.
All right.
So you do have that limit. So there would be, and it would be an extended amount of time that before you could come back and revisit the issue. And Mayor, a moment ago, I think I misspoke. I want to clarify, the deadline to order the election is the 20th of August. So you have a little bit of time. If for some reason tonight you're not able to come to a consensus, you can either do it at your next scheduled meeting if it's before the 20th, or you can call a special called meeting to address this particular issue and make final decisions at that time.
Oh, August 20th.
Yes.
Oh.
Yes, that is the deadline to order the election. So you'd want to have it prepared before that date.
Okay.
Mayor, and if we go back on language, we still want to make sure that we're voting before that based on the unavailability of all council. The reason we pushed for this date and we talked about this schedule was so that we make sure we have 7 here, 7 voters, and we can move forward whichever way you vote. That was the reasoning for getting you ahead of schedule instead of moving it down the road.
So, Ron, if any of the other, say if we held this off and we put the other 6 or whatever on and they do pass or one of them passes, then we'd be looking at a 2-year wait.
That's
Wouldn't be
fine.
next year.
Look, I've been on this council for 8 years and this has never come up until now. Okay, and it probably hadn't come up in the preceding 30 some odd years before that. So I don't see the urgency of this, to be honest with you. I think this can wait and let some future council deal with it if and when it becomes a problem. In the meantime, if they wish to discuss it, we could. I'm not doing it for applause. I'm doing it because I think it's the right thing to do.
Well, we haven't had a charter review committee in a long time.
That's not true. We had one in 2015.
In 2015?
2015 went to ballot. That was the one that set the election to November and a whole bunch of administrative spelling changes. The 2 previous reviews that I sat on this council did not go to ballot at all. Nothing went to ballot as a result of those 2 committee reviews. So there's been 3. This is now the 4th one since I've been on this council. So we have reviewed this charter. This is the 4th time in 8 years.
Wow.
This has never been a problem before.
Well, just because it hasn't been a problem before doesn't mean it won't be a problem in the future.
Well, then we'll let a future council deal with it.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, Dick.
Looking at this from the beginning, I'll be honest with you, of the many things that we were looking at, I thought this was one of the more minor things. This was simply to bring us into alignment with the state laws that existed, but it is apparent to me that this has become much more of a deal. I found out that we were planning all kinds of things I had no idea we were even talking about.
What are you talking about?
And I agree with Mr. Sullivan that I don't want the dang parks. I don't want any of them. I don't want to have to pay for them. And I don't know if y'all are all aware, eminent domain, we have to pay fair market value for the park. We don't steal it. We don't rob the POA. If we use eminent domain, we have to pay the full fair price for that property. Then we've got to maintain it. We've got to establish a staff. We've got to buy equipment. And I don't know if you've looked at the budget. We don't have the money for that. I don't want it. We don't need it. But I cannot guarantee that the POA is going to be able to survive to ensure that these are available to our citizens into the future. You don't have to look very far to find POAs that have been dissolved, have gone under, have failed. Lawsuits, improper management, theft, fraud. They're all things that can happen, and they can significantly affect how the POA is able to take care of its business. All that this council wants to do is to make sure that Lago Vista stays the place it is. that we have this available, that we're there if the POA has a failing. Now, when I ran for office, my one promise to the citizens of Lago Vista was that I would listen and I would vote what the citizens tell me. I've heard you, loud and strong. There is no way that I can vote for this in any form or fashion. Citizens don't want it. You don't see the danger. You don't see the possibilities. That's fine. I will tell you that if we come back in 15 years, the POA has gone under, we've lost our parks, I'm going to shake my finger at every one of you and say, I told you so. Because I really think this is something we need to do. But it is not the desire of our citizens, so I cannot vote for this.
I would like to add on to that. Those of y'all have been around for 15 or 20 years. I've actually seen the city use the powers of eminent domain or attempt to. And I'm not going to say they were all complete failures, but some of them have been and others have not gone perfect. Believe me, that is not something that that's not something that I want to even pursue. I don't even consider it. Ever since this came up, I have brought this up at different committee meetings, my little town hall meetings and stuff like that. I would throw it out there just to see what people's reactions were. And that is when I discovered that it was going to be a problem, not because of what it meant or anything, but just because it has two words, eminent domain, and there is such a fear of what's happened in the past, what could happen. You know, you get other mayors, you get other councils. It was going to be pretty much impossible to get this passed if we put it on the ballot. Now, that being said, we have had two great proposals, one being to change language, one to postpone it, delay it, set up subcommittees and discuss it to see if something can be worked out and bring it up again in 2 or 4 years. You know, we don't have to do it in 2 years. Our charter says we have to review our charter at least every 4. That means we could do it in 2, but hopefully we won't have to do it until 4. So we have options, and I think both of those are great, and we could combine them. We could delay it and then see if we could come up with, you know, a compromise in the language. But I do think it is something that we as a city-wide thing needs to look at into the future, whether we decide to put it on the ballot for a vote now or if we delay it. Again, we're going to be getting 35,000, 40,000 people in the next quarter century. We need to be prepared for that growth. This city has not seen that type of growth ever, and we've got to be prepared for it. We don't want to fail because we were unprepared. Retail growth is going to be coming. Subdivisions are going to be coming. We need to be prepared for the what ifs. Anybody else?
Mayor, if I may, I would be in favor of supporting the proposal with the amendment that has been proposed by Councilmember Sullivan. I think it's something that is very important. To me, it's important to represent the people that are that we serve, but at the same time, I think that it's important that we maintain this idea that we would have an insurance policy from this ever occurring. So that would be my stance. I do echo the concern that Councilmember. I'm trying to remember who it was that said this, but in the prior council meeting that we had, it was expressed that there was fear that if we were to do something that goes against the will of the people, that it would jeopardize the remainder of our charter amendment ability, or the push to make changes to our charter. So I have that fear that I think was expressed before, but I do like the idea of having an insurance policy such that if there is a failure on the part of any of the POAs, that we are able to protect our interests there.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
this city council didn't bring up any of these issues or recommendations. It was the charter review. We went from 14 down to 7, and then we added one that Josh needed to add, and that's where the 8th came from. Again, I'm similar to Dick. I don't think we need to own a park, nor do we want to own a park. But I do want to say one thing to all the citizens that are out there and all the citizens that are watching. When I was running for city council last November, much of the communication that I heard was the citizens wanted more input into the decision-making process. So here's a situation where council is listening to the citizens by giving them the opportunity to vote on what they would like to be included in the charter. It seems like a double-edged sword. Citizens ask for the council to listen and give them more say-so. We are trying to do this. And now several members of the community want council to make the decision. It can't happen both ways. Either I give up and let you vote. I'm not asking you to say yes. I'm not asking you to say no. Just vote. Come out and be a part of the process. I like the fact that there's a full audience in here tonight. But just to sit here and complain about one particular item on it, it seems to me if all 8 items went on the agenda, on the ballot, that you would just come out and vote on it and say yay or nay. You know, that way I at least know that all citizens in Lago Vista are aware of a situation, they're voicing their opinion, and then we could carry it out. I mean, if we sit up here and make all the decisions and decide what's going to be on the ballot and what's not going to be on the ballot, and something goes wrong, then the next thing I hear is, well, city council didn't watch after us. You know, I'm an educated individual that study the issues carefully. I'm concerned about your concerns. But, I mean, if we're going to be a city and continue to grow, then more and more people just need to come out and vote and give their opinion without getting mad, without getting upset, without thinking that city council has got some hidden agenda, because I have no hidden agenda. I'm here, I'm looking at the information, I try to analyze the situation, and then share it with you. That's all I can do. Thank you.
Suzanne? Do you have anything? Everybody else is spoke. So
Well, we just want to make sure I have an opportunity, that I feel heard.
Yeah.
Good news is I never hold back. I have expressed concerns about this from day one. I also can see the consideration of trying to look out for the city, you know, for the citizens long term. And I appreciate giving citizens an opportunity to vote on every situation. I also don't feel like that it's the appropriate time. Right now, all of our existing POAs are in very strong financial situations, and we don't have any imminent need to move forward like this. I also, now I'm not an attorney, I will say this, I am just a crazy business lady, but I'm pretty sure I could hire a really good attorney that if we needed to do something about this, if tomorrow the POA failed, we could find a good enough attorney that would allow us to use eminent domain, even with this in our charter. Just saying, or whatever process we needed. I don't see a reason for it at this time. And our ballot's going to be really long already in November. And I would much rather people get educated about what is on the ballot than waste time being concerned about something the citizens clearly don't want.
Gotcha. Well, then one. And one of the things those of us that actually read the social media somebody did post that there may be something already in place. He mentioned deed restrictions, and I don't know. I can't say, but there may be something in the deed restrictions that state should the POA go under, that city by default, or that property by default, go somewhere. I don't know. So when I get to the people,
Perhaps I'll have some information.
I was gonna ask that question to see if that was there. And if not, then that goes back to, us negotiating on this issue. Anybody else? All right, so at this time, I will open it up to y'all. Again, please don't just get up and say, no, I do not want this. Please, please try and give us some idea other than just no, maybe some alternatives out there. Give us something to think about. I have at least 10. That's 30 minutes if everybody uses their 3 minutes. So please, if you can, keep it short. And I'm going to start with Carla Williams. Please come to the microphone, state your name and address.
Can I ask the city?
Oh, yes. All right, Carla, hold up. Yes, I'm sorry, I meant to call on you first.
Is it legal to
Ma'am?
restrict what we can say? Oh,
I need you to come to the microphone, state your name and,
Barbara McCabe, 6,000 Lakeshore Drive. Is it legal to limit what we can say and can't say?
The city council has the authority to kind of establish the rules of engagement, what you can. Now, I don't see what the mayor requested y'all do as a legal limitation. You have 3 minutes. He's requesting that you provide additional, there's nothing legally that binds you to, you have the opportunity to say what you want to say.
Okay, that's what I wanted to.
Yes.
That's what I wanted to find out.
well, and just so you know, this is not a public hearing. I legally don't have to take any comments, just so you know, but I am opening it up to everybody.
And I may
so.
have misunderstood what this was.
Okay, yeah, and it was.
I'm glad I'm taking my time to speak then, because I'm gonna address just what you've been talking about.
Okay.
So, Carla Williams, 6001 Camille Court. I have been here almost 20 years, and I have listened to numerous councils. Every time something comes up that the majority of the people do not want, unanimously approve. And then we also get this lecture about growth. And I've heard it for 20 years now, as if we're all too stupid to realize what can happen in a city with growth. But I will tell you, I've worked the census, and it hasn't grown as much as everybody likes to talk about when they're approving things that the majority of the people in the city don't want. So I find it a little offensive to constantly be told about how we don't understand the growth here. We do understand, those of us that have lived here a long time. And our POA is doing just fine. I don't think there's any chance that our POA is going under anytime soon. I really would like for our city to focus more on our water issues, our wastewater issues, and our roads. That's what I would really like you guys to focus on, and stay away from our POA. And if there's an issue out there that you're not telling us about, like that maybe Tessera paid some parkland fees back when their PDD was approved, and they're now looking for their parkland, then those things need to be made aware to all of us, okay? If there's some kind of issue where the city has an agenda where they want to get some parkland because they have to go along with some agreement that they made on a PDD 10 years ago, then we need to be made aware of that. And then the city needs to go to the POA and work something out so that they can fulfill that. But this talking about, I'm confused as to why this even came up about eminent domain and taking the POA. Like Ms. Bland said, there's no danger of that happening anytime soon. So why was it even brought up? I always walk away from these meetings wondering whether there's some other agenda that's going on that we're not aware of, because it doesn't make any sense to us. And that's what I hear from the majority of my neighbors. So I'm glad to hear that at this particular meeting, that you all seem to be on the same page saying, I want to represent you. Because I can tell you from experience, that has not happened in this room to me ever, ever. Thank you.
Real quick, just so you know, we did not bring this up. Charter review. So you would
I hear
actually,
you, but
you would have to ask charter review why they brought it up.
Okay, but you're
It was
here now,
it
and
was
you're the person I'm allowed to ask those
okay,
questions.
Let me finish. It was explained to us that this was not in accordance with state law. We might want to consider it so that we would be in accordance with state law. That was the only reason. So that's what we did. We looked at it, and this is where we're at now.
I'm going to go out on a limb here and speak for everyone that I know, and I personally have gone walking around and got 500 signatures from people in Lago Vista when something like this came up, and I will be doing it again if something like this comes up. But I can tell you right now, I think I have a pretty good feel for how people feel about this one, and you need to stay away from the POA parks. Just stay away from them. Keep the hands-off policy with them.
All right, next, George Pond.
Mr. Mayor, I've said a lot over the last few meetings, but I would like to yield my time to our president, Clyde Rutherford, if he would, our able leader at the POA.
I'll make that note. Shannon Molinari.
I threw my name in the hat just in case I had some comments to say, but I'm just here to listen and learn, take it in.
All right. James, is it McCabe?
That would be me.
I'm Jim McCabe, with a microphone in hand, right? I understand that you don't want to just hear me say the same thing I did in an email, so I kind of think that it's a good thing to listen to what everybody said. I like the idea that we're going to talk with the POA. I think that's probably the way to go. I don't see any imminent danger that the POA is going to fail. I understand that there's some concern that if it did, what would you do? Well, it's certainly not going to fail overnight. I think that there's a good opportunity there to discuss it, come to a conclusion that doesn't involve eminent domain, which is just a poison dart. In my estimation, the things I've seen over the years, and I've been here since '99, have been mostly great, but those that aren't are really bad. And nobody starts out with the intention of having those things like acquiring a $4 million property that we don't need, can't use, and didn't have the foresight to assure that we could use it before we got it. So I'm going to make this pretty short because I think the issue that Mr. Sullivan brought up is a good one, and Ron Smith, I liked some of the ideas you have of getting the POA committee and a City of Lago Vista committee to talk about these things. There's certainly a better solution than taking out this provision that I'm not even sure why it was in there to begin with, but I have some pretty good thoughts that everybody else, I'm sure, has thought the same thing. They don't want the city to be able to take their parkland. So to that end, I just wanted to add my 2 cents, and I think that the way to go would be to recommend that it doesn't go on the ballot at all, at least for now, and to go ahead and get a couple of committees together and look at the proposition that Kevin's talking about. There's got to be a way to assure that if some unforeseen circumstance caused the POA to go away tomorrow or the next day or 2 weeks from now, that we would be able to maintain our parklands the way that everybody wants them to be. Okay. That's all I have. Thanks.
If I want to make a statement real quick. just to clarify so that everybody knows, I don't want anybody to misunderstand. The city has eminent domain, currently has eminent domain powers over POA property.
Or any property.
Or any property. I don't want y'all to think that this special thing eliminates all eminent domain powers, and I don't mean to ratchet up the conversation here, but I just want everybody to know that there are certain powers that the city does have. We just couldn't use it as a park. You know, if for some reason 20 years from now they need a new sewer plant and they could prove that to the court systems that that was the best piece of property, they could come in and take over, you know.
We've got one of those right now.
Yeah, but I just want people to know, that this does not eliminate all, this clause does not eliminate all eminent domain powers. Just one power, and that's the power to use it as a park. All right. And Barbara McCabe.
6,000 Lakeshore Drive. I want to assure all of you that most of us are pretty intelligent, and we can look down the line. And I have heard you warn them that doing this would cause a problem. So why you're surprised, I have no idea. Because we watched the television version, and she has warned all of you that this was going to be a problem. But again, let me reassure you, so that I don't use the words you don't want us to. We're all very intelligent. And I did not understand that we weren't allowed to that you could keep us from voicing our opinion. That confuses me.
And why would you?
You're the one that said, if you're gonna come up and say such and such, don't get up.
No, I did not say that. I said, please do not. I'm asking that you do not repeat no, no, no over 79 times, or I ask that you expand into certain areas. That's what I asked.
Okay, anyway, one of the things that I have heard is this is a solution looking for a problem. And that's how most of us feel.
Okay, thank you. Amy Parker.
Hi, Amy Parker, 20601 Continental Drive. Good evening, and thank you for giving us the time to come up here and speak to you guys. I appreciate some of the sentiments that I'm hearing. I've not had that experience interacting with city councils in the past, so I do appreciate that. I have prepared a statement that I'd just like to read through. My husband and I recently purchased land on Continental Drive. We were thrilled to be a part of Lago Vista, so close to Cody Park. In all honesty, we were drawn to this area because of the park system and the beautiful lakefront scenery. And while we are relatively new landowners in this area, it's very obvious to me that the LVPOA is completely capable of providing a beautiful and well-maintained, safe, and controlled park system. I was excited to purchase this piece of land with this association, knowing that my fees would go towards these amazing private amenities. The idea that the city of Lago Vista is seizing this land that individuals and families have worked hard and put their money towards is a little frustrating to me, and I'm pretty new to the area, so I can understand the frustration from the crowd who have been putting money towards these parks for a long time. Mayor and council, I urge you to reflect on the point of view of the LVPOA and the constituents here speaking today. We do not agree with amending the city charter and using eminent domain to have city-owned parks. We do not want this option on the ballot in November, but if it is, please know we will remember who's pushing the agenda and we will show up to vote. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Dick Sterry.
Thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's all right, I can go, you know me. I think this whole concept of eminent domain is a bear trap. I think anything we do to go into eminent domain as a city where it can only affect on a single matter is a bear trap. And I think if we allow this to happen, we're crazy. Because we'll kill our property values. That's my take.
Thank you. Kim Verkande,
Kim Verkande, 6702 Avenida Ann. Wow. I don't even know where to begin. I don't want to repeat anybody's already voiced their opinion, but I do want to express some disappointment in some of the letters that I've seen circulate in social media, not only from citizens, but from some city council members. I thought some of them were very unprofessional, and also some were very no truth to it, like our value. Also, I wanted to bring up, I appreciate you guys as council members sitting here doing the best jobs that you can do, but I think that it's unfortunate that we as a community, such a small community, are having such issues with things that I'm with Mr. Weatherly and Mr. Smith. I think we have bigger fish to fry. Our POA is doing fine. In fact, we're doing more than fine, but I don't understand, this isn't rocket science. I think with what Mr. Sullivan said, it's an easy fix. Where's any more discussion that has to be done? If we fail, I don't think anybody in this audience disagrees that if we fail as a POA, we're happy for you guys to take it over and make sure that it stays parks. That, to me, is the only language that needs to be said or discussed. It's really as simple as that. So I also wanted to ask, why is it when Mr. Mayor, you said that it's all the POAs. We get that you have the opportunity for eminent domain for any place, any POs, but why is it just ours that's sitting in this room right now?
I don't know.
Are you discussing POA eminent domain with the lakeside?
The clause applies citywide, so.
But why are they not in here?
I don't know. I don't know.
Well, I'll answer that. Because they haven't been threatened we didn't get a letter. They didn't get a letter. They're not here because they haven't been, no one's talking about taking over their pools and their parks and their stuff.
Well, no one was talking about taking over y'all's. Your president sent out their letter. Their president could have sent out a letter. We didn't send out the letters. We didn't notify anybody of anything. That came from your POA. So
Okay.
Rusty Island Airport POA could have put out something. Cicero POA could have put out something. Why they didn't?
Okay, real quick, I have
don't know.
16 seconds left. I just want to address one of the things in one of the letters. If Lakeside had an issue in one of their parks and they had, let's just say a predator or somebody come out and, I'm going to lose my time.
No, go ahead.
Okay. Who would they call if they had a drug addict out there shooting up cocaine in their parks or whatever? Who would they call?
Police.
Police department. So I took a lot of issue with the letter that went out saying that it was a favor to us, that it was a courtesy to us, that the police officers patrolled our parks. That's something that's everybody, right? That's not a courtesy to us.
They're private property, and so the police don't go on there unless they're asked to. Now, there's an arrangement between our police and the POA that we do patrol so that we can help tamp down crime, but we're not required to and really aren't supposed to unless we have the permission of the POA. It's private property.
I get that. So is the private property of another POA, but if they have problems, they call the police department.
Absolutely.
So that is not a courtesy that the police department patrols our areas and our homes and our streets and our parks. That's not a courtesy. I just took issue with that. I just feel like we're taxpayers. It's the same with picking up dead animals and everything else. That's something that the city does for every community, not just ours. So I didn't understand that. And I feel like we need to be getting along. 90% of Lago Vista is part of this POA. 90%. We should be able to talk to each other. We shouldn't be doing stuff behind each other's backs or any kind of stuff.
All right.
We need to
participate.
I gave you a little extra time, so.
Thank you.
All right, Anna Jandro.
Thank you. Anna Jandro, 20808 El Dorado Street. I come here as a private citizen. I am also, full disclosure, secretary of the POA, of the board of the POA. But my comment is one that I briefly shared with Mr. Sullivan last night at our board meeting. I am dismayed that the primary failing was not talking to us. That the board of the POA was never addressed before this became a public issue. And I fail to see how it can be of service to our city that the two entities that have the greatest influence on our futures, on our daily lives, on our goals and objectives, are not talking to each other more effectively. And that is all I would like to say, is that most of all of the controversy would have been eliminated or totally obviated had there been the courtesy of a conversation before this became a public subject. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Last, I have Clive Rutherford. And you actually get 6 minutes.
I do.
If you want to. Because George gave you his 3.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, councillors. My name is Clive Rutherford. I'm the president of the Lago Vista Property Owners Association. And I'd like to take the first of my 6 minutes to note that towards the end of this year, I will no longer be president of the Lago Vista Property Owners Association. Thank God. I also note at the end of this year, we will be losing our general manager, Vicky Wood. On the 1st of January next year, we're declaring Chapter 7 because we will have taken the money and run.
I'm kidding. See? That's the reason right there.
Likely story. More seriously, at your July 5th, 2018 meeting, I read a letter from the POA Board of Directors. Please keep in mind this letter was written at a moment in time and as a result of what we believed was a city council action bound to change the relationship between the city of Lago Vista and the Lago Vista Property Owners Association through a change to the city charter. There's nothing in that letter that I would today disown, and in our view, it contained no misinformation or inaccuracies. Had it been shown to do so, we'd have retracted part, if not all of it. Neither was it intended to stir up anger, although it was clearly intended to be noticed. I note that at that moment in time when the letter was written, the council had acknowledged that it was obliged to have all ballot items clearly identified by end of July, less than 6 weeks later. The LVPOA board, which, by the way, meets only once a month, felt that it had one shot at persuading you to leave the POA eminent domain issue off the ballot and wrote the letter accordingly. Yes, we included a few rarely discussed items, but the letter made our point quite well. I shall repeat a point I made at yesterday's POA board meeting, which Kim mentioned actually, which is to note that approximately 90%, perhaps more, of the citizens of Lago Vista are also members of Lago Vista Property Owners Association. We've essentially the same constituency, and I would hope we can do a better job of cooperating to serve them all. You know and I know that we're all volunteers hoping to improve the life of Lago Vista. While I do not regret the letter written by the POA board per se, I do regret that it led to such discord. I ask you to again to simply take the eminent domain issue, Proposition B, Section 203, off the list for November's ballot. I wouldn't actually be too terribly distressed if it went through on Kevin's, but that's a personal note. By the way, I resisted the temptation to wear my Who's Your Daddy t-shirt.
You still got 3 minutes.
Yeah, no, I hadn't known.
Mr. Rutherford, if you don't mind, I would like to call out one thing, and I know that Factually, the letter was absolutely correct. Due to the death of my grandmother, I was not here for the vote, so it was a unanimous vote to move forward. But as pointed out by some of our other citizens, I have consistently not supported this since the beginning, since it first was brought up. So I would have just would have liked a nod in there, instead of having to call friends and family and tell them that I did not vote to move forward with that.
Yeah, no, you were actually present for, and it wasn't a vote. It was, I believe I'm right in saying that the mayor called for a consensus and there was unanimous consent.
Okay.
Well, I'd like to clarify, it was just consensus to move forward with discussion.
That may well be the case.
It was not a consensus to put it on anything. It was just that we would continue to discuss it.
So just not to be nitpicky, but I hurt my feelings.
All right. That's all that I have that have signed up. I saved Clive for last on purpose. But if there's anybody that would like to speak who did not sign up, ma'am, go ahead.
Hi, I'm sorry, I did not plan on speaking. I'm Linda Bottoms. I live at 6400 Lynn Lane. I, like a lot of people out here, I've been here almost 30 years, and I think the POA has done a great job. I look at the term eminent domain with total disdain of that word. I do not like it. Mr. Sullivan brought up the subject of an insurance policy to save our parks. I guess I just would like just a little bit of clarification for myself. Insurance policy to keep our parks, and another lady brought up the fact that we have nothing against the city taking over the parks if something happens to the LVPOA. What happens to those parks if the city takes them over? They've always been private. Again, that's one of the reasons I've been out here for 30 years. Do they become public parks? And that's all I would like to know. Thank you.
Well, I can address the last one. And yes, by law, they would become public parks. But at least if they got to that, it would at least it'd still be a park. But hopefully, we're not going to get to that. But Kevin, address her question?
Well, I think you just did. I mean, that was.
She talked about the insurance. I think she wanted what you wanted
What you meant by
clarification.
insurance. Oh, I just, it was.
You just referred to it as an insurance policy.
Exactly, a euphemism. It's a backup plan B
Right.
if the POA should fail. That's really all.
And I'm sorry, I didn't ask while you were up there. I mentioned that there might be something, because somebody had brought this up on social media. Deed restrictions. Do we know,
No, we've just confirmed, no, we don't.
To my knowledge, I've never seen anything of that nature. One person said deed restrictions. One person said it was actually in the deeds to the property where the property was deeded to the POA. To my knowledge, there's no provision like that.
Okay.
Actually, in truth, I did consult with Mr. Bill Smith, who has accountable knowledge on this thing, since he was the general manager of the POA before we were the city. And he claims there is a document which proscribes the city from taking over the LVPOA parks ever by eminent domain or other. I have not yet been able to locate such a document.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Bill McCartney. I live on 3201 Constitution, and I hate to repeat stuff because everybody's, has different opinions and they've said it a little bit different way. But I think the general consensus is get that off there. Any language towards this proposal B should be not redone or re-talked about. I think everybody wants it off of there. If it's not broke, don't fix it. We've got, if it comes up 20 years from now that it's a problem, let's get back together and talk about it. I think at this point, with our property owners association doing great and everybody loves the parks, why is that even on there? I don't know who actually came up with it. I'd like to know their name. I guess y'all weren't actually authors of that proposition, but they need to know that it's not liked, it's not wanted, and should be not talked about or rewrote or reworded, but eliminated. That's all I got to say.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes, Rebecca. And yes, you have to come to the microphone.
I'm Lisa Shaw. I live at 6611 Lakeshore Drive. I would just like to address Councilman Weatherly's statement about failure. Failure can be a two-way street. Cities are known to file bankruptcy. So I just don't like being confronted with so much fear, and like some of the other people have said about, future, always the future. It's going to be pretty obvious if the POA starts to fail. And I think there'll be plenty of time to do something about that. I'd also just like to ask council to be a little more selective on who they choose for our charter review committee, and that they not be so weighted in one area, like golfers, like maybe, we just get more of a select group of people. Because I think that group of people is actually what's bringing up this issue as to what they see as a problem. I also think it's that when y'all do a charter, that you compare it to other city charters. And what I see is that you try to compare our city to other cities when we're unique. We had a Lago Vista POA long before we had a city, and they did an excellent job. I would just really like to see something in our charter where we honor and respect our Lago Vista POA and give them some type of godfather privileges. And we do that for boat docks. We have a grandfather boat dock, things like that. I mean, why can't we respect them? They've been here for a long time. I support Kevin, Mr. Sullivan. I think that was a great idea. Mr. Smith, you too. I think that was great. Of course, Susanna Bland, thank you. Mr. Weatherly, it was just hard to be scolded on failure of a POA. And cities do fail, and cities file bankruptcy for poor decisions. Thank you.
Ma'am, so when we put out our request for applications, our charter says 3 to 6 members. We got 6 applications. So it's kind of hard to be selective when you only get so many applications.
Well, maybe there's a way to make that more public and that you need more input.
Hopefully next
time
we can.
I do have one other thing.
Get your application for our charter review.
There's one other thing. In the interest of compromise, it seems like somebody every other year is coming after the private parks. This developer, that developer, or the development committee for the city, and they've always got the POA Barquet Park on their little radar. What I'd like to suggest is maybe next council that we look at appointing a committee to maybe look at a grant for the city. There's all types of money out there for the city, the Trust for Public Lands, community foundations, the Texas Parks and Wildlife, that will give us money to buy this public park.
Ms. Shaw, we actually were awarded a grant last year, and we're in process of building a public park in the city of Lago Vista.
Oh, great. Yeah. Then we don't have to hear about that.
Yeah. It's going to be on the 1431 side of the current Cedar Breaks water treatment area. That's up on the frontage road of 1431.
33 acres.
33 acres that the city donated as matching funds for the grant that we received. And of course, Josh, our city manager, is helping us actualize the dream, and the Parks and Recs Committee, their next meeting is on August 8th. I'm sure they would love to have more folks attend and help get that park rolling. Very excited about it.
I know I don't have any more time. This has nothing to do with what we're talking about. It's just, it's so tight in here, you can't even get, you have to like step on people. Is there any way in the next council meeting you can move, give us a little bit more space in these, between these chairs?
If we're not full to,
Sorry.
if we're not full to capacity.
We can't do it off Vista, even an inch would be
Did you have something back there, man?
really tight.
I had a couple questions. Can I ask without making a statement, without going up?
No.
No.
We don't bite.
Well, what is it?
Because we have audience members and we also need it for our recording.
I hate to take everyone's time up if everybody else understands.
There's 14 people who are online that want to hear your name and what you have to say.
21013 Highland Lake. I didn't understand the 2-year thing, so if this gets dropped off of the agenda, does it mean we have to wait 2 years to bring it back up? Yeah. Okay. And then the second thing is, if it is on the ballot and we vote it down, then is there so many years before it can come back up? 2 again?
The Constitution, Texas Constitution places a limitation on how often you can change your charter. So if there are any of the charter provisions that pass, then the city is prohibited for considering any additional charter changes for 2 years. If none of them pass, then you could bring it up next year, but.
So if B were to go on the ballot and A, say A is the only one that passed, we could not bring up B through I for 2 years.
And the same thing if you don't pass it tonight, that it won't
If,
be 2
if
more years?
anything, A through, if B is not on the ballot, but still A passes, still 2 years. If anything passes, you cannot review anything charter-related for a minimum of 2 years.
And then another question I had, and maybe I misunderstood, but when you talked about the first one, proposal, and this one about the parks, you made it sound, or at least I kind of thought that you made it sound like you had that state law says we should have to be able to do this, or that you're trying to get it to match state law.
Yeah, state law does not have any exclusions. So the board just said, hey, we have an exclusion on our books. Maybe we should look at removing this exclusion to just so that we're in line with state law. That's the way it was, that's the way I understand when it was brought to me was, hey, we have an exclusion.
So I guess my question is, how can we have something that's against the law?
It's not against the law, it's just not in accordance. We can make city laws more restrictive, we just cannot make it more liberal. So we can add things, we can add exclusions, we can add things onto it, like adding the exclusion to use it as a city park.
Okay.
But we can't,
And then last question. So if I understand it correctly, right now, it's just that you can take the property over because you have the power to do it, but you can't take it over and use it as a park.
Right.
Right.
Thank you, sorry.
No, thank you. Is there anyone else? All right. So I'll open it up for council again to speak, but the way I'm looking at it right now, we've got basically 3 options. Or 4, we can leave it on, we can take it off completely, we can postpone it and set up a subcommittee, or we can change language and come back in 2 to 4 weeks. So, any further discussion?
Mayor, or we could change the language and actually do it now with the language that I think we can put together, if that's the action.
Okay.
Just to clarify.
So change language either now or in 2 or 4 weeks.
As a point of order, I would suggest.
Take it off.
Y'all make the motions, not me.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
I make the motion that we remove Proposition B from the ballot.
Second.
All right, I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All right, hearing none. All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Hearing none. Proposition B will not be on the ballot.
We're all gonna get up and now it's time for me to go to the bathroom.
Okay, since 95% of y'all are here for Proposition B, I'm gonna take a short recess, and if y'all care to leave and don't want to stick around for the rest of the excitement, I will give you permission.
Does that apply to council members too? Teasing.
Good job. I read that.
That was painful.
Oh, they were. I'm hoping, at least as long as I'm sitting here, whether it's 2 years.
I'll try to come back again, but we're moving. We haven't sold our house yet. We're moving to Athens, Texas. It's in East Texas. Yeah.
When are you gonna do that?
As soon as the council moves.
I know there's so much fear out there, there's so much.
But, you know, it's a real small community. Our daughter moved.
Oh, yeah.
And we took her family, so they used to live in Vernon.
You gotta follow the kids. That would cause in all different directions,
It's a small gated community, so.
No, not if I'm sitting up here. We're not gonna do either. Either. Unless we have our own housing ordinance and we're in control of it. Alright, restroom, coffee, are you good?
I'll borrow the water if you
My wife and I. I'm gonna ask you a follow-up question. Just to clarify. I actually did. Just reformed it.
When we announce it right now, it's not open, because once this is over, it'll shut down. And then in 2 to 4 years, whenever we decide, we'll open it up again. But we do have applications for all of our committees every November.
So I just wanted to say thank you.
Thanks for coming out.
That's great. How are you tonight? No, I'm not. I wouldn't be here.
So, is there anything that you want to hear?
No. My fellow citizens never cease to amaze me that some of the stuff that there was a lot of misinformation. Oh, yeah, there was.
You know, like I was saying, Suzanne said she was afraid this would be like growing up, maybe, I don't know exactly if we went with this, and the boys and everybody's around, they'd all show up to vote it down and everything else.
Yes, we can vote no on everything just to be safe.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I just think that was my fear. Well, several people, yeah, that's a great life.
We come back, obviously, it's like golf course every time. They come running like, I mean, I thought Dick was real inflammatory and it was all uncalled for. And, you know, all the cheering and all that crap. I got told,
She think we're going to
Brian's here. Mark is here.
That's one of the things they're not supposed to be any outcries of clapping.
It's awful. It's just terrible.
Go back. All right, Bob. I know.
All right, if we could. We still have people watching on TV, watching us all run around, so we need to keep it as short as possible. I'll give Ron. There's Ron.
Went to the restroom.
Make it.
I did.
I saw you over there.
Mayor, would you like me to grab Councilor Williams?
Yeah, he's talking.
I mean, I can leave it, but he's really not there, I promise.
Yes, okay.
Check under the table, he may have, I don't know,
No,
back door.
he's not down
There he
there.
is.
He didn't pass
out. There he is.
Are you waiting for me? No.
You can't sit out there, Dave. You got to come back up here.
Sir, we turned off the smoking lamp.
Flash the light.
Sailors, sailors. All right, what number am I on? It's on C. We're only on C.
We're only on C.
Electronic page.
All right, Proposition C. South Section 3.06 entitled Mayor be amended to remove the executive power of the mayor, limit the mayor's authority to direct employees, and to require the mayor to work through the city manager when seeking information from employees. If approved, Section 3.06 will read as follows. Section 3.06 Mayor, the mayor shall be recognized as the head of the city for legal and ceremonial purposes and by the governor of the state of Texas for all purposes of military law. The mayor shall work closely with the council to obtain legislation in the public interest and with the city manager to ensure that the same is enforced, preside at all meetings of the council, and provide the leadership necessary to ensure good government. The mayor may call special meetings of the council and any board or commission or set the agenda therefore. D, the mayor shall participate in discussion and vote on all matters coming before the council, but should have no power to veto. The mayor may meet with and obtain information from the city manager. The mayor may consult with and advise the city manager with respect to any city business or issue. The mayor may require any items to be included on or deleted from the agenda for a council meeting. Agenda items which have been specifically requested by 2 or more council members may not be deleted. The mayor shall have signatory authority for all legal contracts and commitments of the city, but may not bind or obligate the city in any way without prior authorization from the city council. The mayor shall sign all approved ordinances and resolutions. The mayor may recommend appointees for boards and commissions. The mayor, in time of declared emergency, may govern the city by proclamation and direct the city manager so as to maintain order and enforce all laws. The mayor shall have such additional powers as are granted to the office by state law or by ordinance not inconsistent with this charter. I have one question for legal. Dun, dun, dun. Preside at all meetings of the council. What if I'm absent?
That's the function of a mayor pro tem.
Okay, so there doesn't have to be an unless absent clause in there.
She becomes the mayor.
She becomes the mayor.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure we didn't put us in a position where we had to cancel a meeting because the mayor wasn't there. All right, so just for those of y'all in the audience, this is pretty much how we work or how I work. I don't know of anything on this that I'm not currently following already. So the limiting of these duties, I think, falls in line with the way we operate right now. Is there anybody on council that has questions? No. Anybody in the audience have questions? Yes, sir.
George Pond at 6105 Camille Court. I would recommend that you don't change the powers of the mayor. Keep it as it is. I don't see a problem. I haven't been able to study it as thoroughly maybe as you have, but I think we need to have a strong mayor. Thank you.
I don't think this is necessarily having a strong mayor or a weak mayor. It's just a process in which we've been following.
Yeah, I think, George, this is more of a clarification. I know the way it's written, it says remove powers. I don't think this really, like I say, this is the way we're currently operating. I don't think it's going to change anything at all. It's just a clarification because of the way it was worded it was kind of hard to understand what the powers of the mayor were.
So. I have a question. Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Okay. We don't really know because the next subject is on the city manager, okay? And the two most important people on a day-to-day basis is either the mayor or the city manager. So not knowing really what the next issue is regarding the city manager in its role, as we've been operating currently, where have there been really any major problems as to why you would want to change?
Not with this administration.
With previous.
But there have been in the past.
Right. George, the one change I believe that happened was very specific. And it was the mayor was allowed to direct the city manager. And that's been removed. I mean, it was a very small change to this section. And I think what we're trying to put forward is, in a typical council, city manager government like we are, the city manager is directed by the council as a whole, acting as a body, instead of one particular individual, i.e. the mayor, directing that city manager. And so we're just trying to clarify that to indicate that the council as a body will direct the city manager.
You have 7 bosses instead of 1?
No, they act as a body. They act as one. We act as one.
All the decisions are made on a vote, and it's a majority of the council that comes up as one voice.
Mr. Mayor, I just want to make sure for the record that we're clear about what the changes were. The first change that is reflected in this is to remove the executive power of the mayor, because typically that resides with your city manager. That's another change we'll get when we get to the next section. It's being added there. So that's change 1. Change 2, as Councilmember Sullivan mentioned, your power is being limited with regard to what direction you can give to the city manager, and that direction should come from city council as a whole. And then the third thing, it has to do with what communication you have directly with staff. Those are the 3 changes within this particular section.
Mr. Mayor, I will reiterate some concerns I had previously. While I support ensuring that we don't have any voice of authority that overrules the council or any other member, we have seen abuse of power in this city in the past, so I understand where this comes from. I do still have concerns about creating barriers in communication between staff and the council and mayor.
I don't think this limits communication. It just limits
Direction.
being able to direct.
Okay, fair.
I can't go to Dave and
Dave, go change my tires.
Yeah. The mayor needs a new router in his house. I can't do stuff like that.
Okay.
But I can go directly to him and say, hey, can you tell me how to log into my computer? Because I don't know how to do it.
Yeah. Conversely, we've had in the long history of Lago Vista, we have had city managers that have not our current one we are blessed to have, but in the past we've had city managers that we've struggled with. So does this still leave us with enough authority or the mayor to act quickly in a situation where we have
we have called special meetings and fired within like 72 hours, whatever that minimum power period was. We have called it specials.
Not Josh, but whoever his successor is, because after Josh wins the lottery, we may not get as lucky as we did this time.
Still not good to hear the mayor know the plan so quickly. It'd be nicer if you at least asked Aaron for a little bit of guidance.
It's not because I memorized it, it's just because I've lived it. Anybody else on council? Was anybody else in the audience? All right. So, proceed. I'm open for.
Mayor, I'll make a motion that we move forward with Proposition C on the November ballot.
I'll second. March.
All right, I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Hearing none, Proposition C. We'll move forward. All right, Proposition D. Shall, Section 3.23 entitled Prohibitions, and we have all kinds of good words in here. Annexation, prohibition.
I mean, seriously, I thought about bringing a martini to the meeting tonight, just because of that.
Shall section 3.23 entitled Prohibitions be amended to clarify council, including the mayor, only has powers as a body with a quorum present, except where a power is conferred upon an individual member by the charter or by council. If approved, section 3.23 would read as follows. Section 3.23, Prohibitions. The council shall have powers only as a body meeting with a quorum present, and no member shall have power to act individually, except where that power may be conferred upon the member in this charter or by the council. The individual council members shall have the right to meet with the mayor to inquire about any matter or issue, and with the city manager or department head to obtain information deemed necessary to make informed decisions regarding the business of the city. No member of the council shall give orders directly to the city manager. No council member shall give orders directly to any other city employee. Ms. Bland, this addresses your ability to communicate with your department heads. All right, anybody on council have questions, concerns? Audience, anybody? All right. Proposition D is open.
I'll make a,
Go ahead,
Mayor,
Art.
I'd like to make a motion that we proceed with Proposition D.
I'll second.
All right, I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Hearing none, Proposition D moves forward. Proposition E, shall, section 4.01, entitled City Manager, be amended to clarify that the city manager is the chief executive and administrative officer of the city. If approved, the first sentence of the second paragraph of section 4.01 would read as follows. The city manager is the chief executive and administrative officer of the city, responsible to the council for the efficient administration of all the city's affairs placed in the manager's charge by or under this charter.
Mr. Mayor, this is more of just something for Sandra. As you do minutes, in this packet, there is a question mark at the end of the first sentence under Proposition E instead of a period. I know it's a bit persnickety, but I think we probably want a period.
I think if you look at all the propositions,
Well, not all of them have a question mark.
well, I know D has one, charter or by
Okay.
council.
The next one didn't.
Uh,
F did, oh, maybe it's just me. You're
Well,
right.
the first word is shall.
And it
so
says
it's just a
shall.
question.
Because this is, I think this
Okay.
is the ballot.
It's asking a
Oh, is
question.
this the ballot line? Okay,
So
all right,
it-
never mind.
we're
That's
asking-
withdraw it.
We are asking a question.
Okay, I withdraw it. Withdraw my issue.
All right. Count,
Just
did
read
we
so
have
funny.
any further discussion on this one?
I make a motion to approve Proposition E.
I'll second.
All right, I have a motion and a second. All those in any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Hearing none, Proposition E moves forward. F, shall, section 4.01 entitled City Manager and 8.06 entitled Amendments After Adoption be amended to clarify that the city manager has the authority to transfer funds between departments within the same fund. If approved, a new subsection 4.01I would be added to the section, and existing subsections I through K would be renumbered, and section 8.06 would be amended to delete the last sentence of the section, and the second to last sentence would read as follows. Section 4.01, I have the authority to transfer funds between departments within the same fund. J, provide staff support services for the mayor and council members consistent with the intent and requirements of this charter. K, ensure that all terms and conditions imposed in favor of the city or its inhabitants in any public utility, franchise, or other franchise or contract are faithfully kept and performed. Upon knowledge of any violation thereof, he or she shall call same to the attention of the city attorney, whose duty it shall be to advise the city manager and the city council of such steps as may be necessary to enforce the same. L, perform such duties as are specified in this chapter or duties not inconsistent with this charter as required by the city council. And sections 8.06, at any time during the fiscal year, the city manager may transfer part or all of the unencumbered appropriation balance from one department to the appropriation for other departments or purposes within the same fund.
Mayor?
Sir.
Can I start with a comment?
You certainly
Thank you,
may.
sir. As I requested this to be on council, I would actually do the opposite for consideration and request that council remove this item after my discussion with previous council members, to remove this from the ballot.
All right.
Thank you.
So y'all have heard the
I'd like to make a motion.
request from the author of,
I'd like to make a motion that we remove Proposition F from the consideration for the ballot.
I'll second that.
all right, I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Nay? Hearing none? Proposition F is off the ballot. And I'm sorry, I did not see your hand, but did you have a
I
question?
have just a little question about, for clarification. If the amendment about removing the executive power of the mayor, if that passes, but then the amendment to give the executive power to the city manager does not pass, would that be a problem?
Then I have all the power.
Yes.
They're not
No.
contingent on each other, are they?
They are not contingent on each other.
I don't,
The council would simply appoint the duties that the city manager has.
well,
Yeah. Well, in theory, you could have one measure fail, and so you could have the executive power vested in both the mayor and the city manager, depending on how those went. And that would stick for 2 years. And so that's, it's certainly a consideration. You could also have the opposite effect where no one ends up with the executive power. However, the council has the authority and duty to assign and all of the duties to your city manager, and you would vest that same authority in him. And so this is not a ministerial act, but more of a pro forma language within your charter, because you already have the authority to establish what his duties are as a city council.
there you go. Clear as mud?
As long as you guys understand it.
I have one observation.
All right, George.
Dealing with, what if we're in a disaster? Let's say a fire, disaster emergency. Who has the executive authority? The city manager or the mayor?
The proposal we just looked at says the mayor does.
Yeah, that's what that would establish here. All right, so we're on G now?
G.
Okay. Proposition G, shall Section 5.01 entitled Elections be amended to add new rules regarding candidates for elected office. The new rules would require an incumbent to file for the same position as presently held or to file for office earlier and resign from their current office. If approved, the following paragraph will be added to the end of Section 5.01. Candidates shall follow these rules. No candidate for office, including incumbents, may withdraw their candidacy and refile in the same election. And B, no candidate may file for more than one office or position number per election. And C, incumbents seeking re-election must file for the same position that he or she presently holds. And D, an elected council member
filing for the office of mayor shall file for election 15 days on or before the filing deadline, and E, an elected council member filing for office of mayor shall resign from the office presently held on or before the canvassing date.
Mr. Mayor, I would like to once again express my concern about item E. An elected a council member filing for the office of mayor shall resign from the office presently held on or before canvassing date. Requiring voted upon and elected officials to resign from their seat so that they can run for mayor, I believe is not in concert with the voter trust that was placed in them and placing them in their position.
Okay.
Mayor, if I may?
Yes.
I would add that that is not language that is not found in other charters.
And what number E?
Number E.
I benefited from not having this. And I also see that it wasn't fair to the other mayoral candidate that he had everything on the line and I did not. So to me, that item is a fairness issue, I guess.
Since when is politics fair?
You know what?
Since when is life fair?
Starting now.
I'm just saying, I think that people ought to come at it with equal footing.
I understand what you're saying, but fair is not a state of being, it's weather.
But I also think that the council member, you're talking about, the citizens voted him. They voted him in as a council member. Now he has decided to no longer serve as a council member. He wants to run for mayor.
And if they don't like that, they won't vote for him for mayor.
Right.
I really don't like that. I feel it's incredibly restrictive and not in the spirit with the way that political offices have been held in this country since the day that it was founded.
Right. Okay. And then in addition, because of the way we have 2-year elections and they're opposite, 1, 3, and 5 never have that possibility. They always have to put their position on the line to run for mayor. 2, 4, and 6 do not ever. So again, that's a fairness thing.
And fairness is weather, is a state of the weather, not a state of being. I mean,
But we can change it to make it fair.
And we can give everybody a ribbon too for participation.
That's right, we can.
I don't think it's that unusual to say that people who are can't hold 2 positions at once, and if you choose to run for a particular position, you're giving up the one you're in. I don't think that's unusual.
I'm not suggesting that we allow people to hold 2 positions at once. I'm just stating, I do not personally feel that it is appropriate for us to tell any council member they have to give up their current position if they're going to run for mayor. I think what you're saying is that, incumbents that have some experience, that have some tenure and understanding about this office and in this city, you got to put it on the line. You can't be on the council anymore if you want to advance and help the city at the next level. I think I'm very strongly opposed to E. I may be the only one, and that's fine.
I think every council member running, every incumbent should have to put the same amount of risk on the line. If 1, 3, and 5 have to risk it all, then 2, 4, and 6 should have to risk it all.
My concern with this is that if you are a councilman that is not coming up for re-election and you run for mayor and you win, then your council seat is empty and vacated, and the people that voted for you in that council seat have lost their representation. So I felt like that the idea of this was that if you were running for another office, that this made it apparent to all concerned that seat needed to be filled by somebody else.
And
it gives the citizens an opportunity to vote for a
I
replacement.
absolutely see your perspective. I just disagree.
Okay. But now, am I wrong?
Yeah, the combination of D and E.
That's what D is.
That-
Yeah, D and E accomplish.
That's basically what I got from it. That's
Well,
what,
D,
wait,
D, where I support D, I don't support E.
okay.
There's no reason for D if you don't have E.
That's right.
Don't see a reason for any of these.
Anything else from council? All right, audience? All right. Hearing none. Oh, I'm sorry.
I just have like a procedural question. So let's say it was the situation that Mr. Weatherly described. So you don't give up your seat, right? So the seat becomes open because you go on to mayor. How does that seat get filled? Because it used to be that.
By appointment by the council.
Okay, appointed by the council.
Well, there's different scenarios. Depending on the time of vacancy, it's either appointed or it's scheduled for the next general election. So there's two different ways. It just depends on how long the vacancy is.
And what you're suggesting is that they give up that seat and then that seat would go on the ballot along with the.
Yes,
mayor.
correct.
That is correct.
And Ms. Bland, you might not be aware of this, but what I saw a lot in previous councils was that people would get appointed, they would either move on to something else and get appointed. And by the time we got around to election time, there might be 3 people on the council that had already been appointed and their seats come up, they're already incumbents, you know, and so somebody who wanted to get in had a hard time getting in. It was like an old school,
Right.
you know.
Well,
So.
and there has been a case that we've experienced where an incumbent lost but was still on the council and became very disruptive for the next year that they had remaining. So,
Yeah.
you know, that's not the case now, but it has happened. So that was another reason why we considered this one. Right. If no other comments, G is open.
I would like to make a motion, Mr. Mayor, that we approve Proposition G.
I'll second it.
All right, I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay.
Nay.
The motion carries 6-1. We move, make it official there. Proposition H, shall, section 7.04 entitled Board of Adjustment be amended to remove the board's authority to consider variances and hear appeals of decisions regarding the building code, that are heard by the building committee. If approved, section 7.04 would read as follows. Section 7.04, Board of Adjustment. A Board of Adjustment is established to perform such duties and functions as required or authorized by state law, this charter, and the enabling ordinance. All right. Arch, was this yours? Would you like to?
No, but I can speak to it. In the case of Proposition H, what this would do is remove the Board of Adjustment as being the Board of Appeals to something that has to do with the building codes as opposed to the zoning codes. They would be restricted to listening to appeals only as they apply to zoning code.
Okay.
Can I just ask a question on this?
Sure.
Did the Board of Adjustments run like the P&Z where we had a legal person there at our meetings? Is the Board of Adjustment the same way?
Yes.
So if this switches.
They have regulatory authority.
Right, so if this switches to the building committee, is the city going to provide the legal for the building committee to be able to do what the Board of Adjustment?
That is a further agenda item.
Yeah.
Okay. So we have to approve this first before we can get to that?
Not necessarily.
Oh. Okay.
Well, possibly, yes.
They would be hinged.
Yeah. Yeah, probably. We'll
Okay.
discuss that in.
I gotcha.
Anything else? Audience? All right, Proposition H.
I'll make a motion, Mr. Mayor, that we move forward with Proposition H on the November ballot.
I second it.
All right, I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Hearing none, motion carries unanimous. H moves on. And Proposition I. Shall the charter be amended to correct non-substantive grammatical and typographical errors and to allow for the addition of a table of contents? Section 13. The recitals contained in the preamble hereof are hereby found to be true, and such recitals are hereby made a part of this ordinance for all purposes and are adopted as a part of the judgment and findings of the council. Section 14, all ordinances.
Mr.
I
Mayor.
think we need to vote on I.
Oh, on each
before we
one?
can move on to that. No, we just got to vote on I and then we can move on.
Section 13 starts the rest of the ordinance.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought that was under I.
No.
So did I.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay. Grammatical errors. Okay.
That would be one of them.
We have to vote on whether or not we can spell check the charter.
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion that we approve Proposition I and correct the grammatical and typing errors.
Second.
All right. I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Hearing none, aye. Moves forward.
Mayor, procedurally, now that we've gone through each of those propositions, we would like to have council make the motion on the ordinance. From my notes, I have 7 items, 7 propositions that you'd be placing on the ballot using this ordinance. You would strike in the motion Proposition B and Proposition F.
Which in the verbiage are, if you look at the verbiage of the ordinance that he would read, that would be the amendment of the city's eminent domain would be struck. And which other one was that?
The other one was Proposition F.
F would
Which
be
is
City manager transfer fund.
clarifying the authority of the city manager transfer funds.
Yes, ma'am.
There you go.
I have to read it? I'm not making the motion.
Mr. Mayor, I'll make a motion that we adopt an ordinance of the City of Lago Vista, Texas, ordering a special election on the 6th of November, 2018, to consider 8 proposed amendments. Actually, it's 6 now, to the charter of the City of Lago Vista, clarifying the city's annexation and disannexation authority, removing the executive power of the mayor and limiting the mayor's authority, clarifying the powers of the city council to act, clarifying the role of the city manager, adding new rules for candidates elected to office, clarifying the authority of the Board of Adjustment, correcting typographical errors, making provisions for the conduct of the elections and the language to be used on ballots, authorizing the city manager to contract for election services and other provisions incident and relating to the elections, and providing for severability and an effective date.
And I'll second the motion.
Second.
What's that, 7?
Let me, I see 7.
I have,
7.
okay, so I have a motion, I have a second. So as part of discussion, I know this says, originally says 8, but I count A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I as 9.
So we should be
We
7.
take 2,
It's
it'd be
7.
7.
I'll amend my
Have to do
motion
it
to
on
say
the
7
fingers.
instead of 6.
You got a second.
Okay.
Does the tick have to be the second?
Yes.
Yeah,
I'll
so,
second.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So I have a motion and a second for 7. Any further discussion?
Yes, sir. Mr. Mayor, I'd like to ask the question from our legal staff. If we introduce another proposition giving the authority to the building code to be a commission which is able to listen to denials of the city code, would that be another additional proposition that we'd have to add to the charter?
Possibly so. If you're going to give the
building committee?
The building committee, the authority of a commission,
Yes.
as the other commissions are reflected in your charter, and giving them that proper legal authority, it would be something that you'd want to add to your charter.
Okay. So,
Otherwise, if it's just a committee, it wouldn't require any change to your charter.
so can we then approve the 7 that we have now and add an 8th afterwards?
You can adopt another ordinance that would add an additional proposition to the ballot, but as long as you do it before the 20th of August. And then what you would do would be to recognize that you, on this date, you adopted an ordinance to send these 7, and you're going to adopt an additional ordinance to add an additional proposition to the ballot. You just have to do it before the time frame.
Thank you.
So would those be bundled together?
Yes, yes.
You approve both at the same time, or because you could approve one and not approve the other, and then you got a conflict. So is that a match set?
I want to make sure I understand what you're asking. If we approve the changes that are propositions that are on today, these 7, and put those forward, and we want to add another one, the change that Councilmember Davila is suggesting, the second ordinance that would include that final proposition number 8, we would recognize in that ordinance that we have already adopted an ordinance including these 7, that we're adding an additional one, and it would be proposition G?
Why couldn't H be amended to add it to H?
That's an interesting question.
So when you approve H, not only do you grant the appeals process, but you also fix the committee that hears that process.
You can do that. That is another way to approach it.
I think you'd want them grouped so that you don't, if you get them separate, you could get one and not the other, or vice versa.
Right, if they get
That's
approved,
true.
they get approved for regulatory power, but then don't have.
They don't have.
And for that same reason, that is why you see 2 different sections being amended in Proposition F. That's why there were 2 pieces to Proposition F. So you'd have the same thing for Proposition H. You're correct. I haven't thought this through.
Well, it just needs to go through as a group, I guess.
So procedurally, would we then have to amend Proposition H to include giving regulatory authority to the building committee, which would become the Building and Standards Commission?
Yes. So tonight you can vote to approve this ordinance by another ordinance that you adopt at the next meeting, whether it's regular or special called, as long as it's for the date. You could adopt another ordinance to amend this particular proposition to have all of the language, just so that you don't have to, so that you don't put this off, so this is done. And you can come back and have another ordinance that amends this proposition to address all of the issues related to the building committee becoming a commission. And it would give us an opportunity, Dottie and I, an opportunity to provide you to evaluate it fully, look at the language, provide you guidance, legal guidance on that issue as a whole.
But that would be all under Proposition H.
Yes, if it's because it's affecting that particular section, it's advisable to have it all together, because you don't want that situation where you have a chance of adopting one thing and not another, and you have a conflict.
Yeah.
Mayor, is it possible, Aaron, that action could be completed by council by ordinance and not by charter amendment?
I think that's something I want to evaluate further. I want to look at it closer. I think I haven't fully evaluated the legal impact of that change.
That is a regulatory. That's giving them a lot of power.
You're giving them the authority. They would become a regulatory body. They'd be subject to the Open Meetings Act. They would be subject to. They would have a final decision-making authority, and that's typically covered in your charter. But whether you can do it by ordinance, whether it has to be changed in the charter or not, I need to look closer at that issue.
I think the safe thing is to make it a commission, and then we can proceed with all the language that gives them the regulatory authority that they currently do not have. At least the authority that they have right now is kind of vague.
Sure. And so that particular item's not part of this charter proposal.